Imagine this scenario, right? You track your daily macronutrients down to the gram.
Hmm.
You log your sleep architecture to the, exact minute.
Naturally.
You even monitor the behavioral temperament of your aquarium fish. You have basically built a perfectly quantified life. And then, well, your entire rigorous health regimen is just completely derailed by a half-eaten plate of your partner's leftover pasta.
Oh, man. It is the ultimate collision, isn't it? Like, between the fantasy of total control and the super messy reality of actually being a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
We all love the idea of self-engineer. We sort of assume that if we just, log enough data, we can somehow calculate our way out of bad habits or bypass our biological limits entirely.
But the data often just ends up reflecting our own chaos right back at us. And honestly, that is our mission for this deep dive today.
It's a great mission.
We are exploring this really fascinating personal log. It's titled This Week in Review 2026 Week 30, and it's written by an author named Ang. And I mean, Ang tracks a staggering amount of personal metrics.
The level of detail is just extraordinary. But I think the real value of this source material isn't in how perfect Ang is.
Right.
It's actually in how imperfect the week turns out to be.
Yeah.
Like Ang explicitly notes in the log that health and wellness are the essential foundation for everything else.
Which makes sense.
Totally. Yet, as we comb through this week's log, we see that exact foundation constantly cracking under the weight of, well, just everyday life.
Yeah. So if you are listening to this right now and you have ever tried to build a flawless morning routine or like a rigid workout schedule only to have a random Tuesday completely ruin your streak, this log is going to feel incredibly familiar.
Painfully familiar, probably.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So let's start with the physical body, specifically sleep. Looking at the top line data, Ang achieved an average of 7.0 hours of sleep this week.
Right.
Most people would look at that single aggregate number and think, perfect, 7 hours, mission accomplished.
Which is such a trap because that number is a perfect example of the illusion of averages.
Yeah, it really is.
Averages smooth out the turbulence, right? Ang is actually highly self-aware about this, noting in the log that the raw daily data tells a completely different story.
A highly chaotic story, honestly. I mean, Ang logs one night with this severe sleep deficit, just 4 hours.
Ouch.
And then the very next night, a massive rebound of 9 hours of sleep. It really makes you realize that sleep debt operates a lot like a high-interest credit card.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You can't just swipe your card for 4 hours one night, try to pay it off with 9 hours the next, and assume your biological ledger is perfectly balanced.
No, absolutely not.
The math averages out to 6.5 or 7 hours, sure, but your body is still paying massive physiological interest on that initial debt.
And that physiological interest payment shows up clearly in Ang's data. I mean, Ang reports catching up through what they call fragmented sleep, but also experiencing days marked by incredibly vivid dreams.
Which is so interesting.
It really is, because it points directly to how sleep architecture works under duress. When you severely deprive yourself of rest, your brain doesn't just sleep normally the next night.
What does it do instead?
It aggressively prioritizes the recovery of REM sleep and deep, slow-wave sleep.
Meaning the brain, shifts the actual ratio of the sleep stages.
Precisely. So slow-wave sleep is when your body repairs tissue. It flushes out metabolic waste like adenosine, which is the stuff that builds up while you're awake and makes you feel tired.
Right, the sleep pressure stuff.
Exactly. And REM sleep is where emotional processing and memory consolidation happen. So when you only sleep 4 hours, you essentially starve the brain of REM.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So on that 9-hour rebound night, the brain plunges you into these extended, really intense REM cycles to make up for lost time. That desperate catch-up phase is exactly what triggers those highly vivid dreams Ang experienced.
Wow. But Ang doesn't just record this chaos and accept it, though. There is a deeply targeted intervention plan happening in the log.
Right. Ang is a tinkerer.
Yeah. The log mentions using consistent massage and heat pad treatments right before bedtime, which actually led to much more stable sleep during the middle of the week.
The heat pad intervention is actually rooted in some really fascinating circadian biology.
Really? How so?
Well, your body's core temperature needs to drop by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate and maintain deep sleep.
Wait, drop? But a heat pad makes you warm.
I know, it sounds counterintuitive. But when Ang uses a heat pad, it warms the skin, which brings blood flow to the surface.
Oh, okay.
That process is called vasodilation. It helps the body radiate heat out through the extremities, effectively lowering the internal core temperature. And that signals to the brain that it's time to sleep.
That is so wild. And it makes the other intervention Ang mentions even more interesting.
Pumpkin seeds.
Yes, Ang writes about a plan to start eating pumpkin seeds to help with sleep. They're like on the immediate to-do list. At first glance, pumpkin seeds just sound like a random folk remedy, you know?
They do, but they are actually a biochemical powerhouse for sleep.
Really? Why pumpkin seeds?
They're incredibly dense in tryptophan. That's an amino acid that the body converts into serotonin, which is then synthesized into melatonin.
Ah, the sleep hormone.
Exactly, the hormone that dictates our entire sleep-wake cycle. And beyond that, they contain massive amounts of magnesium.
And magnesium helps you relax, right?
Right, it binds to GABA receptors in the brain, which are responsible for calming nervous system activity and relaxing your muscles. So Ang is essentially using food as a targeted pharmacological intervention.
Which perfectly bridges us into the domino effect of physical movement and diet. Because, as we know, sleep issues never exist in a vacuum.
Never.
Let's look at Ang's physical hurdles for the week. The log tracks daily steps, aiming for buckets of 4,500, 6,000, or 8,000 steps, plus some strength recovery training. But this week, the steps slightly dipped to 6,065.
This seemingly insignificant dip, right? Until you look at the actual cause.
Yeah.
The drop wasn't from a lack of motivation. It was a result of resuming gardening chores and running errands in the rain.
If you've ever started a new workout routine, you know exactly how this plays out. You optimize one variable and you completely break another.
Oh, 100%.
The gardening triggered back, buttock, and knee pain. That physical pain then made sleeping in a normal posture difficult, which feeds right back into the fragmented sleep cycle we were just talking about.
The dominoes start falling.
Exactly. And on top of that, the back pain forced Ang to postpone swimming. Now, Ang is suddenly researching home exercise equipment for proper strength training.
It really highlights a critical blind spot in how we approach physical optimization. We often program our routines, assuming our bodies will operate like machines.
Right, just perfectly consistent.
Exactly, completely ignoring the reality of asymmetrical strain. Like swimming is a highly symmetrical, low-impact fluid movement. Gardening, on the other hand, requires repetitive bending,
Yeah, twisting under load, pulling weeds.
sustaining awkward postures for long periods. Ang's body wasn't failing, it was just responding naturally to a sudden shift in mechanical stress.
The physical constraints are super relatable, but the dietary tracking is where this log reaches, like peak human comedy for me.
Oh, this part is amazing.
Ang is an incredibly disciplined intermittent faster. The log details a 168/52 fasting routine.
Which is intense.
Very. For anyone unfamiliar with that shorthand, Ang is combining two intense protocols. The 168 means fasting for 16 hours a day and eating all meals within an 8-hour window.
Right.
And the 52 refers to eating normally for 5 days of the week and then heavily restricting calories for the remaining 2 days.
It is a seriously demanding framework. It requires significant willpower. Furthermore, Ang overlays this with a strict macronutrient ratio, described as a 211 or 221 ratio.
Right, meaning 2 parts plants, 1 part protein, and 1 part carbohydrates.
Mm.
And aiming for only 70% fullness, plus intentionally eating sardines multiple times a week.
Sardines are great, but yeah, it's a lot to manage.
With a dietary strategy this locked in, you would expect absolute weight stability. Instead, Ang's average daily weight ticked up from 69.96 kilograms last week, lingering all the way up to 70.60 kilograms.
And Ang is highly analytical about this, explicitly noting that the data rules out simple water weight fluctuation.
Because the root cause is much more psychological.
Oh, completely.
The root cause is the partner's leftovers. Ang confesses to eating up to 4 meals a day in larger portions, simply because their significant other kept leaving unfinished food around.
It's the ultimate trap.
I don't care how ironclad your 16-hour fast is. If your partner abandons half a plate of delicious pasta on the kitchen counter, evolutionary biology just takes over.
It really is a textbook example of decision fatigue and willpower depletion.
Yeah, willpower isn't infinite.
Not at all. It behaves more like a muscle that tires out over the course of a day. Ang spends an enormous amount of cognitive energy maintaining that 16-hour window and calculating those 221 macro ratios.
Right.
So when confronted with the sudden, unplanned availability of highly palatable leftover food, the depleted brain just opts for the path of least resistance.
Ang extracts a pretty brilliant insight from this lapse, though. After, quote, so many moons of intermittent fasting, the log notes that the timing of food intake is just as critical as the portion size or the food choice.
Yes.
Grazing on those extra meals completely shattered the fasting window, which disrupted the whole metabolic rhythm.
The grazing also destroyed that meticulous 2:11 ratio. Aang admits the diet skewed heavily toward a 112 ratio.
Wait, meaning only 1 part plants to 1 part protein and 2 parts carbohydrates.
Exactly. Double the carbs. And to bandage this dietary shift, Aang resorted to taking supplements.
But Aang immediately recognizes the flaw in that strategy, right? Supplements cannot fully replace whole food intake.
They absolutely cannot, and Aang's realization here is vital. When you strip whole plants out of your diet and try to replace them with a pill, you lose dietary fiber.
And fiber is way more important than people think.
So much more. Think of fiber not just as like healthy material, but as the physical scaffolding. It's the retaining wall within your gut.
Okay, a retaining wall. How does that work?
Well, soluble fiber dissolves in water to form this gel-like substance that literally slows down the absorption of glucose into your bloodstream. And insoluble fiber acts like a broom for the digestive tract.
Right.
When you skew to a 112 ratio and eat your partner's processed leftovers, you essentially demolish that retaining wall. Blood sugar spikes faster, hunger returns sooner, and the gut microbiome starves.
That makes total sense. And Aang wisely notes that the only real fix moving forward is getting back to self-cooked meals and actively increasing plant intake to rebuild that structure.
Rebuild the wall.
Exactly. So we have a physical foundation under serious siege. Back pain from raking leaves, chaotic sleep architectures, and metabolic spikes from eating a partner's leftovers.
It's a rough week.
It is. When the body is dealing with this much friction, where does the mental resilience come from to keep logging all this data?
Well, Aang's mental toolkit provides a really fascinating contrast to the physical chaos.
How so?
The approach to mindfulness isn't about escaping the messy reality. It's about grounding oneself directly inside it. Like, Aang doesn't retreat to a silent ashram.
Right.
Instead, mindfulness is integrated into the very chores causing the physical pain.
Yeah. The meditation logs are wonderfully understated. Aang tracks 1, 2, or 3-minute sitting meditations, just these micro doses of awareness.
Which is very practical.
And more impressively, Aang practices walking meditations and mental noting while doing the gardening chores. The exact act of raking leaves that wrecked Aang's lower back is simultaneously used as a tool for psychological centering.
I love that.
The summary in the log is just 3 words: stoic as usual.
Stoic as usual. That encapsulates such a profound acceptance of the present moment. In psychological terms, this is the difference between active and passive coping.
Wait, what's the difference there?
Passive coping would be, avoiding the yard work out of frustration or pain. Active coping is accepting the physical discomfort, remaining present, and completing the task without emotional reactivity.
That is seriously impressive, yet we see a massive juxtaposition when we look at Aang's digital environment.
Oh, definitely.
On one hand, you have this earthy, analog Zen practice of raking leaves. On the other hand, Aang is operating a heavy-duty technical stack. The log mentions daily pull request contributions to languages like Go, Python, Elixir, Erlang, Rust, and Haskell.
It is an incredibly dense cognitive load, just a ton of brain power.
Right. And within that digital realm, Aang is actively bootstrapping personal pet projects, specifically leveraging artificial intelligence to streamline daily computing chores and automate their personal journaling process.
Which is a cool project.
Yeah, Aang writes 3 posts a day and notes that using AI for this is something they should have done, quote, so many months ago.
But I know you're going to push back on this.
I have to play devil's advocate here. I mean, I love the hacker ethos of scratching your own itch, but using advanced AI models, writing in Haskell and Rust, just to prototype custom tools for writing diary entries? Is that brilliant productivity, or is that like engineering a complex hydraulic robot arm just to stir your morning coffee? Aren't we vastly over-engineering the simplest analog act of just writing down our thoughts?
Well, I mean, from a pure efficiency standpoint, your robot arm analogy is perfectly valid.
Thank you.
It is a super common trap for developers to spend 10 hours automating a task that takes 10 minutes to do manually.
Exactly.
But if we dig into Aang's explicit philosophy in the log, we find the real mechanism at play here. Aang writes that these hobbies and projects exist to build skills and create a sense of accomplishment.
So the diary entries are just the excuse to build the tool.
Exactly the point. The intrinsic motivation isn't a faster journal entry. It is the neurochemical reward of problem solving.
The dopamine hit.
Precisely. When you write code, hit a bug, troubleshoot it, and finally get the program to compile successfully, your brain releases a surge of dopamine.
That makes sense.
For someone functioning at Aang's technical level, prototyping an AI tool offers a huge psychological win. It creates a sense of agency that offsets the lack of control experienced in other areas of life, like, the unpredictable back pain or the sleep deficits.
Oh, wow. That makes profound sense. The act of building the tool provides the dopamine that sustains the discipline elsewhere.
Right.
It's also interesting how Ang balances this high-tech dopamine loop with real-world medical awareness. The log mentions trying to find time to read a book on controlling the three highs.
The three highs. That is a crucial detail.
What are they?
Yeah, it's a colloquial term frequently used in East Asian medicine and culture. It refers to high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and high blood lipids, which is cholesterol.
Oh, got it.
In Western medicine, we typically cluster these under the umbrella of metabolic syndrome.
Which ties directly back to the dietary struggles with the leftovers.
It really does. Ang is intensely aware that sitting at a computer coding in Erlang all day, combined with eating a partner's carbohydrate-heavy leftovers, is the exact recipe for developing those three highs.
Right.
Reading about it is a preventative measure. It balances the digital obsession with strict biological reality.
This builder's mindset, this urge to tinker, observe, and adjust, it doesn't stop at the computer screen. It spills straight out of the digital world and right into Ang's physical living space.
That's my favorite part of the log.
The micro-optimization of the physical environment here is just deeply actionable.
Yeah, Ang completely avoids the trap of massive overhauls. There is no weekend warrior attempt to, renovate the entire house in 2 days.
No.
Instead, Ang applies the concept of the aggregation of marginal gains to domestic life.
The home improvement goal is literally declutter one item per day.
Just one.
Yeah, this week the focus was just the kitchen and dining area.
Removing one item a day seems mathematically insignificant, sure, but human beings are incredibly sensitive to visual clutter.
It's exhausting.
It acts as a constant low-level drain on our cognitive bandwidth. By removing just one item daily, Ang is slowly reducing that cognitive load without triggering the exhaustion that comes with a massive cleaning session.
Because over a year, that is 365 points of visual friction just eliminated.
Exactly.
We see that same incremental tinkering everywhere. Ang is battling a stubborn macro lens on a new mobile camera, researching external lenses, and planning small balcony grout work. But my absolute favorite adjustment, the ultimate life hack of this entire week, comes from the aquarium.
The dwarf cichlids.
Yes. Ang breeds dwarf cichlids, specifically a type called crebensis. Ang has this elaborate yellow-blue rack setup, modifying sponge filters, planning outdoor ponds.
Serious fish keeping.
Oh, totally. But the brilliant hack involves the substrate, the material at the bottom of the tank. If you walk into a pet store to set up an aquarium, they will sell you highly marketed, expensive, branded aquatic gravel.
Right, and it costs a fortune.
It really does. But Ang bypasses all of that.
Ang uses construction fine sand.
Yes. The cheap sand you buy in massive, heavy bags from a hardware store to mix concrete or level paving stones. Ang washes it, dumps it in the aquarium, and the crebensis cichlids absolutely thrive in it.
The biology behind why this works is fascinating, and honestly, it makes this the golden nugget of the entire deep dive.
Tell me why.
Well, cichlids are natural earth eaters. In the wild, their primary feeding behavior involves scooping up mouthfuls of the riverbed, sifting the material through their gills to extract microscopic food, and then expelling the waste.
So if you put them in a tank with that expensive coarse gravel...
The coarse gravel can literally cut and damage their gills, or they simply can't sift it at all, which completely suppresses their natural behaviors and stresses them out.
Oh, wow.
Construction fine sand perfectly mimics the silty riverbeds of their natural habitat. It is infinitely cheaper and biologically superior. This construction sand hack is the perfect overarching metaphor for Ang's entire approach to life optimization.
You don't need the heavily marketed, expensive, or conventional solution?
Nope. You just observe a point of friction, you test a small unconventional workaround, and you see if it yields a better result.
Wow.
Whether Ang is figuring out how to cool the body with a heat pad for better sleep, using pumpkin seeds for tryptophan, building an AI journal in Python for a dopamine hit, or using concrete sand for tropical fish, the methodology is identical.
That brings us to the real value of Ang's Week in Review. A well-examined life isn't a flawless one.
Not at all.
It is not about executing a 16-hour fast every single day with robotic precision. It is about spotting the domino effect. It is the self-awareness to say, I did yard work in the rain, which gave me back pain, which ruined my deep sleep, which depleted my willpower, which resulted in me eating leftover pasta.
And once you map that chain of causality, You stop viewing your failures as moral shortcomings.
That is so freeing.
It is. You simply view them as data points. You acknowledge the setback, you forgive yourself, and you look for the construction sand, the small, clever adjustment to fix the environment for tomorrow.
We have covered incredible ground today. From the neurobiology of sleep rebounds and vivid dreams to the importance of dietary fiber as the gut's retaining wall against the three highs.
We really have.
We've explored the active coping of stoic yard work and the psychological rewards of building your own AI tools.
I think the overarching lesson is that the biological ledger is never perfectly balanced. The chaos of being human will always interfere.
Yeah.
But the sheer act of tracking it, of paying attention, is what keeps you moving forward.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a challenge. We saw how Aang's meticulous logging revealed hidden patterns, like the devastating impact of a partner's leftovers on a rigorous diet.
Right.
Think about your own daily routines.
Yeah.
If you were to track your life as relentlessly and honestly as Aang for just one single week, what hidden domino effect would you uncover? What invisible trigger is throwing off your sleep, your mood, or your focus right now, just waiting for you to discover your own version of construction sand to fix it?
It is an experiment highly worth running.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it armed you with some new perspectives on your own biology and maybe a little bit of grace for when your routines inevitably fall apart. Keep observing, keep adjusting, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.